Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Bailey. Today I looked over a quantitative research study and I evaluated it based on the criteria in Hauser's book. Evidence-based research is important for our nursing practice. Like I said, I evaluated the validity of this research study based on a couple different checklists that Hauser has in the book. When looking at the design of the study, they talk about the design, the methods, in a couple different sections. You can find it in the abstract and further down. They did say that this study was a quasi-experimental trial involving the 4 generalist community nursing services in New South Wales, Australia. So quasi-experimental would be the design. The author did provide a rationale for why the design was chosen. They said that this study adopted a quasi-experimental design because it was not feasible to randomize the intervention according to individual clients or practitioners within the services. The specific ways that the procedures are designated and implemented are listed within the article. The authors use tables and descriptions to objectively describe the instruments used and how the study was measured. So they use a couple different tables, and it shows, it prints out the results, which questions were asked, the percentage that answered whatever answer to that question, and it lists all the numbers out there. I did not specifically see a section that noted the reliability of the instruments that were used or any statistics that would have supported that. I did notice, though, that they go through to explain the many limitations. Apparently, there were quite a few limitations to this experiment. They address that in the discussion section of the article. The author does identify threats and biases to the validity of it. Most of the threats and biases were identified from the patients themselves, not the caregivers. So he doesn't specifically talk about, or the authors in general don't specifically talk about biases for them. It's mostly about biases for the people that are answering these interview-style questions. There was not any evidence of researcher biases. The authors provided information about their findings, and they stated their findings. They stated that their findings did differ from other findings of similar studies. So what they said was that they got negative outcomes. They did say that their outcomes were probably negative because of the biases that they had, and probably because of the way that the study was conducted. But because their findings were negative, I do not believe that this study would be good to generalize for other groups of people or settings in general. This isn't the type of study I would want to use in my nursing practice personally, just because there wasn't a significant change. It wasn't really any good outcomes. When evaluating the results of the findings, I did believe that the tests were appropriate for the study. I do believe, though, that the limitations like they had discussed and possible patient biases make the study results somewhat skewed. No assumptions about the data were made, and no 2 groups were compared. The tables and graphs in the article are easy to read and labeled correctly per the Hauser criteria. The results that are reported in the tables and graphs are consistent with the information that's summarized that they talk about. The authors report the findings objectively. They don't put any type of insight in there. They just report what happened and why they think they got those results. In the medical community, I believe that research and evidence-based practice is very important. I do believe that, in theory, this study might have potential if some of the limitations and biases are eliminated, like I had said. I believe that the use of interview-style instruments causes the large margin of error that they have in the results of the study. I think if it were reconstructed in a way that you were able to get results that were objective instead of subjective to what interviewers or interviewees answer, instead of doing like interview style questions. If they had objective data, numbers, figures, based on other things, I think that you could probably get different, better results. And I do think the theory behind it is a good theory, something that could be redone, but the results just weren't that great. So if I were to look at this specific study and say, would I use this in my nursing practice, I would say no. Maybe I would look into similar studies, but not this one in particular.